Why has spoofing increased so much? Do you think that there's a technology spin-off that has taken place, that something that was relatively in the hands of military is being accessed by people in the civilian ambit?
Uh, I would say partly you're right. However, we must have a clear distinction between civil aviation and military aviation. Though the source data is of a satellite, we must understand, the viewers must understand, the aircraft primarily navigates based on the GPS system. Also, the manufacturers have inculcated a system which is, you know, we call it inertial navigation system. It works on a ring laser gyro, which is a system which is already there inside the aircraft. So GPS is an external aid. Now in this growing and evolving situation, we see a lot many aircrafts, and India being the third largest aviation market in the world, such kind of instances and situations will increase. Now these miscreants who are trying to create this sense of you know uh, uh, confusion, wherein the pilots who are sitting inside the cockpit can be misled, like your report clearly says. You're very very rightly drawn the distinction between spoofing and jamming. So the pilots are trained. While I was in government service, we had issued a circular dated 2023, wherein there was a feedback that if you encounter such situation, you're supposed to inform the regulator. So the government was proactive enough to take certain steps and measures. And now, when on the floor of the House, the Honorable Minister has stated that yes, the country had faced this attack, this cyber attack. We have to be extra careful.
So, Prashant, how big is this challenge? Because the technology is evolving, technology is not static, response also need to evolve. And this time the minister spoke in parliament. The reply was given to the parliament. People were surprised to know that this spoofing happened simultaneously at 7 spots that day.
You very rightly said, with technical upgradation, you get a lot of challenges. This is a grave threat to the national security. However, we must understand that the pilots are highly trained individuals, professionals who are given that particular training. So I remember my case. I was also trained accordingly for this particular instance, where you were being fed in a simulator a wrong data. The aircraft is supposed to be, for example, let's say overhead Delhi, but we simulate it to be overhead Canada. Now the pilot who is trained enough, he is able to land this aircraft safely with the available navigation data. It's a very serious issue, but the pilots are also very trained individuals who have this mitigation trainings already in place.
I'm also joined by Kanish Kaur, founder India Future Foundation, cyber security expert. How come these spoofing incidents going up? What I really need to understand is that aircrafts are not 10, 20, 30, 40 years old. We have a long aviation history. How come there's a spurt in spoofing attempts? Why is this happening?
So, with the advent of technologies, getting access to that kind of infrastructure to create fake bogies has become relatively easier right now for terrorists. That's made it. Secondly, the aspects with respect to no flying zones, which are to be there around airports, I don't think so that is being followed. Third, with the use of drones and artificial intelligence, you could create fake bogies quite easily. So one has to ensure that the mandate which DGCA has in terms of having no-fly zones is properly followed on ground. And the zones where you find drones operating and then creating fake bogies, or the infrastructure which is set up near the airports, you need to have proper sanity checks to ensure that access is not provided. Because setting up a fake bogie for GPS spoofing is not easy technology. The infrastructure is quite expensive, right? So someone has this kind of infrastructure and then is using technology to his advantage, because the regulation is there. But when it comes to on-ground implementation of the regulation, I don't think so. We have done sufficient guardrails right now across multiple airports in the country.
Okay, Kanish, so what are the guardrails? Can you tell me? What are the guardrails which need to be deployed?
I think we've got an expert who's on a panel with me. He should be able to articulate it right? You have specific zones where there should be no drones around. You cannot have surveillance equipment around airports, right? Which could be used for jamming or spoofing. This is mandate as per DGCA. Now, to ensure this mandate is being followed on ground, what is the level of checks and balances which are being followed? That is something that really needs to be looked upon right now. So if someone tries to use technology and then use drones and then use AI and a combination of creating fake bogies, you have to constantly monitor and detect it. So it is a responsibility of the staff which is there responsible for command center operations, uh, safety and security for safe landing. I think they need to have better monitoring equipments on ground, and these monitoring checks have to be constant, right? And they have to work with law enforcement
You made a good
agencies
point.
on
I'll
ground.
take this to Captain Prashant Hella. You made a good point. If you look at the warfare that's happening across the world, Prashant, if you look at the Delhi blast, you didn't find RDX there. There was no plastic explosive there. These guys were trying to create explosives through what is available in the industrial units or the agricultural units. So the warfare has become hybrid. So even in the aviation technology, you don't need to get a military gear to do this. You can actually outsource your material through Amazon and build something which can be really intrusive and harmful to the aviation sector. So when you were there attached with DGCA, how did you work on these probabilities, emerging technologies impacting our aviation sector, sir?
A very good point. What you raised is, the government establishment always work in a joint committee. We have a wireless monitoring organization. Also, the Ministry of Civil Aviation has a Bureau of Civil Aviation Security. Now they are at every given time are trying to get to the modern warfare techniques. They're trying to have a mitigation exercise. We have a control zone around the airport. As a pilot, I can very well say that you have been trained accordingly for these kind of instances, and that is when you are able to secure an airport entry pass. That is the first prerequisite, that you have to undergo that basic level of training to understand what are the emerging threats of civil aviation, what are the the modern warfare techniques adopted by the so-called miscreants. And leaving that part behind, I would like to also mention a very important point, that we must understand what are these ground-based installation. We can call it a bogey, but when an aircraft is at 35,000 feet or 40,000 feet, and you are in contact with various satellites, and you're trying to get your position accuracy up to date, this kind of a fault in the aircraft, or kind of a confusion in the aircraft, can really create a mishap. Having said that, the pilot is also able to understand that, and have a feedback mechanism, that like Kanish has very rightly said, that must identify that if this particular instance is happening at a particular zone or at a particular level, that fact finding is very much necessary at this stage.